yeah, there's a pattern in all of this. As I say in that chapter, you can see the intellectual underpinnings, and they come from this idea that if it's a Marxist idea, but it's just transferred to the modern era, where instead of talking about society in class structures, you talk about it in minority interest group structures, and you lump people like this. What is the primary aim of this? Among other things, it is a different interpretation of society, which is therefore intended to segregate and pull apart societies as you and I might understand them, so that people's primary affiliation is not that I'm an Australian, or I'm British, but I'm a member of the LGBT community in the Greater Sydney area, for instance. You can predict with 100% accuracy the people who encourage this, the people who will grab the latest claim by an interest group and run with it. And it is always people who in the past had another way of trying to attack our societies, had a radical Marxist view of the world, for instance. We know this with the green issue, where, and again, like the rights issues I write about in this book, they succeed because they're not onto nothing, The green movement is onto something with the environment and with our planet. But it has this hideous red interior which keeps exposing itself as desiring not a better relationship between ourselves and our environment, but, for instance, the end of capitalism. Yeah. And it's the same with this. I expose in each of the chapters that the people who make it repeatedly and desperately plain, that they believe, for instance, that being a woman should be merely the first step in a wider mission to bring down capitalism. Now, I don't think most women are on board with that, and most women would be rather surprised to be utilized in this fashion. But that is very clearly and explicitly, and I quote the various scholars and writers who've been pushing this for years, this is explicitly the aim. And it's why, as I say, you can always predict exactly who is going to latch onto the latest claim. When, for instance, the big bearded man with male genitalia wins the women's weightlifting competition, you can predict with 100% accuracy who is going to say, yeah, what's the problem with that? And the people who are going to say, I'm not sure Clive, the big weightlifter, should be winning the women's category. You can predict it. And the people who say, why have you got a problem with that, bigot, are always the same people who believed in the past that our societies needed to be pulled apart in another fashion. And now they'd like to do it in this fashion.
So this what might be called, I think accurately, cultural Marxism. People groan and say, oh, here we go again. Yeah. But in reality, it is the case, isn't it, that from the 20s on, Frankfurt School, and the 30s, you had Gramsci and so forth, saying there's a problem in the overthrow of capitalism. The working classes are not rising up.
Yes, they were always a letdown.
They're always a letdown. They haven't done the job for us. So we need to find a different way to achieve the same objectives, and it's to attack the cultural underpinnings of Western society. In particular, I would have thought things like capitalism itself, democracy, of course, but also Christianity and the churches, and family. Family. So the great loser out of a lot of this, frankly, I would say, these culture wars, are our children.
Yeah.
We've deconstructed the family in so many ways, and this further attacks the environment in which our kids grow up.
Yeah.
I've never quite understood how, though, the cultural Marxists managed to so capture academia in the West, and particularly, it seems to me, in the English-speaking countries.
Oh, well, that's easy. I mean, first of all, academics can be, I think, fairly characterized as not among the bravest people in the world. That once they get tenure, they become very comfortable in a position. They are this isn't always the case, but they are to a considerable extent, as long as they tick the right boxes and have the right views, an unusual beast in nature and they have no predator. They are able to have a very comfortable position in which they should express perhaps uncomfortable discoveries, but the comfort of recent decades has become the comfort of espousing and following a basically culturally Marxist view of the world. The literature, the evidence of this is so overwhelming now, particularly from America, it has to be said. And there are reasons within that why that's the case. I mean, look at the amount of money that people now run up to get an education in America. It's happening in the UK as well. But if you massively increase the number of people who go to university and think they should go to university, you can't keep up a system that rewards people for having gone to those universities. And you create a Ponzi scheme, which is what academia has to a great extent become, where social science departments grow and grow, where the human resources departments grow and grow. I can't remember the multiple now, but it's something like 3 or 4 times more money is now spent in the American Academy on the purely bureaucratic elements of it than even 20 years ago, which means that young people in countries like America are running up massive debt in a Ponzi scheme that cannot reward them because there aren't roles at the end of it for all of these people with the degrees they're given. I think, by the way, there's a massive amount of resentment coming in the next few years from the people who realize they've been had.
I think this is one of the great dangers, frankly, for Western society. I agree with you.
But to go back to the origins of why academics might be in this position, I mean, let me put it another way, and this is one that will make me enormously unpopular with some remaining friends in academia, but it's also the case that to a great extent this isn't where the bright people have gone in recent years. Tell me, outside of specific sciences and competencies, tell me a situation where in the last 20 years we would say, this is a really big problem. Let's go to the universities and ask them for the answer. When in recent decades we've had massive issues, have we been saying, we must ask the professors what they think? No, we haven't, for all sorts of reasons, but one of them is they're not very good at giving us the answers anymore. And by the way, the place you'd go last for an answer would be the gender studies department of a West Coast university. Let's go and see what they can tell us about the sexes. Oh, there aren't sexes, there's just 100 genders, including 2 spirit people we just invented yesterday. Oh, great, they're useful. This is a useful department. Thank goodness kids are getting into massive debt being lied to by these people. They've lost in large part the competence they had. And I think that there's all sorts of reasons for that. As I say, among other things, a massive expansion of that sector beyond where it should have gone.
Well, astonishing. And one of the reasons it matters now is that such a high proportion of young people in the West go through university.
Yeah.
And then they filter out into teaching our children, into the media, into all sorts of influential places. Now the boardrooms, they've become centres of great wokeness.
Yes.
In our country.
Yes, of course they have. I mean, it used to be said the only small c conservatives you would find in university were generally in the economics departments. They would also always have Marxists in the economics departments. But you'd often find that was where some conservatives were because the economics still needed conservative thought. That's not the case so much anymore. And it's certainly not the case in the humanities. And the evidence and what studies have been done show just the overwhelming preponderance of Marxists, self-identifying socialists and others. I've often said in recent years, the only place you can really find open, radical Marxists after the Cold War closes is in the university system, although now we also have it in our political system, so that's a development.